You can keep bringing file folders full of work home or going to the office 7 days a week and lamenting the fact that your car is the first in the parking lot and the last to leave every night, or you can get help.
Do you feel like your systems and processes in your business need some work? Have you ever thought about using the Entrepreneur Operating System to gain traction in your business, but you're not sure how to implement it successfully? Welcome to Driven to Win. This is the show that helps entrepreneurs who want to win in all areas and aren't afraid to do the work to get there. I'm your host, Chaz Wolfe. My mission on this show is to help entrepreneurs learn to grow and win in all areas: business, family, health, faith, and lifestyle. We have an exciting addition also to this episode. Joining me as co-host is Jake Isaacs, the COO and Integrator at Gathering the Kings. Jake brings a wealth of experience and insight, making him the perfect co-host for today's discussion. Welcome, Jake.
What's up, everyone? Happy to be here and share my perspective, as I've served as an integrator for several corporations in my past. Chaz, I'm also the #1 fan of this podcast, so co-hosting with you is a real special treat. This conversation is going to be incredible. I'm looking forward to getting into it.
That's right, Jake, because we've got Mike Paton on the show today. He's a true expert in the EOS system. He's co-authored 2 books in the Traction Library, including Get a Grip and Process. He's here today to help you transform your business from chaos to a well-oiled, profitable machine. We discuss if you should hire an implementer for EOS, common mistakes when implementing EOS, and Mike also shares the 4 traits all effective integrators have in common. Plus, stay tuned to the end so you can get behind the curtain and hear Jake and I share our thoughts on the interview. If you have ever wanted to bring more structure, organization, and growth to your business, this episode is for you. We are ready to rock and roll here. We have been anticipating this moment. We've got a lot of really cool guests, but EOS as a system is something that a lot of our clients are on. GTK is on. There's self-implementing. There's obviously implementers. I'm sure you probably have a little bit of a formula of like when someone should self-implement versus when they should just kind of buck up and hire an implementer. What do you see as being the value for each one, or maybe the right formula?
Yeah, I think the right formula is a decision that every leadership team and every leader ought to make for himself or herself or themselves, right? What Gino built the system to be simple and practical, and it doesn't require any advanced business acumen. It's basic concepts that have been around for 1,000 years and going to be around for thousands and more. The only advice I give somebody who's intent on self-implementing, who believes self-implementation is a good fit, is twofold. First, please bring your leadership team in to see me. There's no charge for this, for 90 minutes. Let me paint a picture for you of what the end of the implementation journey is supposed to look and feel like. So you have the box top of a jigsaw puzzle. Right? If you don't know what the puzzle is supposed to look like when you put it all together, it's impossible. Try doing a jigsaw puzzle with the back of the pieces up instead of the other way around, right? And then the second thing is, be aware that you are more likely to influence what the people on your team say, think, and do than you believe you are. The vast majority of my clients who own their businesses or are the CEO or whatever, head person in their leadership team can't imagine that they would intimidate any other member of their leadership team. And it is just really hard to make important change happen as the leader of an organization, because about 50% of the time, we're the problem. And what an outside facilitator does is 2 things. It allows you as the leader to participate alongside your leadership team members as an equal, which is good for you because it's really hard to hat switch all the time.
Right.
And then the second thing it does is it gives you a coach in a room who's going to hold you as accountable as you would like that coach to hold everybody else on your leadership team. And that creates equity, and equity creates open and honest dialogue and healthy, productive conflict, and so on and so forth. So if you're worried at all about those 2 things when you're contemplating self-implementation, just go see a professional EOS implementer in your region, do that 90-minute meeting, and then have an open and honest conversation with your leadership team at the end of that 90-minute meeting, and with the implementer still in the room, about whether or not you're likely to be more successful with you leading the charge or some other team member leading the charge or hiring somebody else. And whatever decision you make at that point is a great decision. And I've seen self-implementing companies do great work as long as they know where they're going on their journey and they've got somebody like me available if they get stuck or confused or frustrated.
Yeah, I think that picture that you gave is really, really healthy both ways. I was just talking to a client actually just like 3 days ago about this exact thing. And I said it a slight bit different. I said that if the reason why you would hire the implementer is because if as the owner, you want to experience it also, rather than being the experience, to be in the experience, be able to show up to the meeting and not have to have prepared for it and be running it is a totally different experience as opposed to having to be the guy or the gal. So I love the other additions that you gave to that.
Yeah, cool.
The other thing about that, I think, is as visionaries, right? You've got all of these different ideas and the inability to necessarily make all of those ideas come to fruition. So when you come to your leadership team with this idea of EOS, it's just one of those other things that Charlie Brown's teacher has been talking about.
Yeah.
Right? So like, how seriously are we going to take this?
Wah, wah, wah. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly.
That's good.
Well, Mike, when you look at some of the businesses that you've known have self-implemented, are there common mistakes that you see in this self-implementation process?
Well, you mentioned one of them, right? The smorgasbord approach to using the foundational tools of EOS, right? And the foundational tools are the VTO or Vision Traction Organizer, the accountability chart, rocks, the two-part meeting pulse, including quarterlies and annuals, and weekly level 10s, and then a great scorecard cascaded throughout the organization. And so, when I say to a client, well, what's your accountability chart look like? And they say, well, we haven't done the accountability chart yet. Well, that's what we do first, because a vision without traction is hallucination. And so in order to gain traction, you need to clarify who's accountable for what. And when you're crafting a VTO, for example, and we're not real clear on who's accountable for marketing and sales, and the visionary keeps saying we're going to be $100 billion in 5 years, the people in the room aren't really going to say, hey, I can maybe get you to 400 million, boss, but 100 billion in 5 years, you're nuts. And so it's those kinds of things. And, not running level 10s or thinking you can do it every month instead of every week. And, it's what you learn after 17 years of EOS implementation is you learn the tweaks that aren't dangerous and you learn what's going to kill you. And the biggest one is a lack of simplification and overcomplication of the work. I've seen 15-page vision traction organizers. And for your listeners and viewers who aren't steeped in EOS terminology, the VTO is usually a 2-page strategic planning document that clarifies the company's vision and plan to achieve that vision. And so, 3 pages, every once in a while, there's an issues list that's a little too long to fit on page 1 or page 2. But 15 pages is just somebody vomiting all over, a Word document until everybody's going to be confused. And so those are the kinds of things you have to be careful about.
Yeah, the responsibilities chart is such an important thing. When we self-implemented EOS ourselves, there was 3 of us. So the leadership team was 3, but then there were 3 employees, right?
Yeah.
And so we didn't necessarily think that was the thing that we should start with because it's just the 3 of us.
Yeah. How hard could this be?
We ran for about 6 months and saw very little growth inside of the business because we weren't clear on the roles. And then last October, we were all together and got very clear about what our 3 roles were. And from October to January, we doubled the size of the business just because we now knew what lanes we needed to run in and could be free to do what we needed to do inside of those lanes.
Yeah. And I don't know if this is what happened to you, and I'd love to hear back from the 2 of you, but, because we're steeped in what we call the structure first, people second approach to building an accountability chart. What we do is ask the leadership team to say, to get from where we are today to where you want to be 6 to 12 months from now, what are the major functions of this business? And those major functions, in the simplest accountability chart most of my clients would come up with, would be one leader in charge of marketing and sales, one leader in charge of operations, one leader in charge of finance or finance and administration, and then an integrator and a visionary if there is one in your organization. And so it's 5 seats. And so with 3 people, if that's the accountability chart you come up with, now you have to decide who's in which seat. And in many organizations that have 3 people in it, the visionary feels like he or she is in every one of those 5 seats, and there are 2 admins that are just waiting around to be told what to do. And so what that painting that picture does is help you realize you can't grow and scale if that's the way you're going to structure your business. A genius and 1,000 followers doesn't work. A genius and 5 followers probably works, maybe 25, but at some point you're going to be beyond your capacity to delegate to a team of people who are looking to only you for direction. And so that's the joy of this work. Like when I explain it that way, I'm sure everybody's like, oh, that makes sense. But man, when it was the 3 of you, you're just sitting in the room going, I don't know, there's a bunch of stuff to do. I'm just going to grab a shovel and start digging. And you do the same. And then you're whacking each other on the forehead with your shovels and throwing dirt in one another's eyes. And it's really frustrating.
Yeah, I want to respond to our scenario, but I want your feedback on it, because you're 100% right. In that moment, it was me shoveling by myself and then an assistant. And then, we bring in Jake, and there's a couple of other assistants. It's really, that team was 3. And we were just kind of all doing it. Yeah, we were all shoveling. And so, to your point, creating the accountability chart, even so much so to where it's like, okay, Chaz is a visionary, but he's also the head of sales and marketing now. And that's cool, because Chaz has a scorecard and there's certain KPIs that he has to hit, and he's reporting to Jake, the integrator.
Yep.
And Jake still reports to Chaz as the visionary. And some people are like, wait a second, what? But when you write it out on paper, it makes perfect sense. I'm just wearing 2 hats. What would you say to that?
If I'm not taking care of my responsibilities and accountabilities, right? And that's what you discovered in that moment of, hey, the make it up person has an unlimited filter on making shit up. But when it comes to making things happen, we're a little less gifted in this area, and we rely on other people to do it. And so every once in a while, if you have to make things happen in an organization with 3 people in it, it helps to have an accountability partner, and Jake served that role for you. So I think that's a fabulous story, and I would hope all your self-implementing members use that thinking to help embrace the accountability chart, even if they only have 1, 2, or 3 people, because it clarified. The other thing it did is it probably put you in a position to say, hey, someday we're going to have somebody other than me in the sales and marketing seat.
Exactly.
And so now in that role, you're not only thinking about how you can be effective, but you're thinking about maybe putting a process in place that is going to help a new person succeed without the growing pains that they would succeed with if they started from scratch. And it just has you think about your business differently when you're accountable for something.
Yeah, I agree. And actually, I think for that reason, because of that, never ending well of golden BS that we were talking about as visionaries, because of that, actually, most of the time, we don't recommend people self-implement. It's not like we're experts on EOS by any means at all, but we have clients that come across the book, or we talk about it in a mastermind setting or something, and it's like, oh, that's really interesting. Maybe they read the book and then they've got questions like, well, what did you do? How what have you seen? And I think our experience, 1 being so small, 2 being both of us kind of have the integrator. We're gonna get to this here in a second, but I scored high on both, and Jake scoring super high on an integrator is like, we felt like we were capable. But for most visionaries, I think the implementation process that you guys have is the way to go, because it's the only way that's really going to hold to it, because the visionaries are, like you said, kind of just a never ending flow of thing, not necessarily accomplishing or checking.
Yeah. Yeah. You got that right. And I, the funny behind the scenes story here is that when I was trained for the first time 17 years ago, I self-identified as an integrator. And I said that to Gino about 3 or 4 years into my journey. And he just started laughing. He couldn't even talk to me.
Good
Like
job, bud.
15 minutes he's laughing. And I'm like, hey, what? Come on. I've accomplished a lot in my career and blah, blah, blah. He goes, Peyton, you're not hardwired like an integrator, dude. You're capable of integrating, but you're hardwired as a visionary. And that is true of almost all entrepreneurs, is that when we're passionate about something and we're determined. In fact, if you want to motivate me, and Chaz, this is going to resonate with you, I'm almost certain, tell me something isn't possible.
Right.
Like that'll really get me going. Okay. So Jake, if you want to really fire Chaz up, there's your tip for today. It's going to be a long week, buddy, but that's, so
I may not sleep.
There's a misconception in the world that the only thing that qualifies you as a visionary is if you score really high in this assessment and really low in this assessment. It's not right. Okay. You can get data points that confirm where you're going to be most happy and satisfied and effective, but those are just all data points. And a lot of people can be effective in roles they're not hardwired to be great at and to love every day. And then the other thing that happens, Jake, is a lot of integrators out there feel like because they're an integrator, they're not allowed to have vision. Well, I hope you have vision. And, we specifically hired my integrator looking for someone whose hardwiring was, able to look into the future. Because if she was too execution oriented and not, we were early stage entrepreneurial company. We didn't need a, chief operating officer from a 5,000 employee company that's just trying to eke another 0.1% of net profit out of the organization. We needed an executor with some vision. And so it is a spectrum. Every visionary is different. Integrators come with a lot of different qualities. What integrators have to have is focus, discipline, a comfort with being accountable and driving accountability, even upwards to the owner or the visionary. Okay. An ability to have tough conversations and get in the muck rather than, a lot of visionaries want somebody else to fix the problem. And you can't, if you got 3 people in your organization and there's a problem with being caused by 2 of them, the visionary is looking around for somebody else to fix the problem. There isn't anybody else. And so that's that whole visionary integrator thing. It's a spectrum, and get your data points and ask your team. That's the other thing. When I have this conversation in that 90-minute meeting and the visionary says, yeah, I'm not really sure if I'm a visionary or an integrator, 85% of the time, the rest of the team just starts laughing. What?
They know.
Right. Exactly.
Well, let's get your opinion here. I told you I'd bring this back up, but on a data point here, Jake was 90 integrator, 45 visionary, and I was 94 integrator, 97 visionary. What are your thoughts on that combo?
You're better at taking tests than Jake is.
Yeah. God, if that ain't the truth, Mike.
That's my answer. You knew the right answer to both surveys.
That's
and
funny.
You knew the right answer, right? So that's it.
I love that.
What I would be saying to you is quit looking at the test. Just what do you want to be? What's the highest and best use? Like real estate, right?
Yeah.
If you're a real estate developer, you're constantly obsessing about, for this piece of ground, I could do anything with it. It could be a golf course. It could be a farm. It could be an apartment complex. It could be a strip center. It could be a commercial office building. What's the highest and best use of this piece of ground? The piece of ground isn't taking a frickin' assessment test.
Right.
Piece of ground is just a piece of ground.
Yeah. That's good.
What's the highest and best use? What's going to bring you joy? What's going to add the most value to the business? Now go do that. So for those of you out there who are visionaries watching this and you're wondering what kind of integrator you need an integrator you feel that way about, that they're going to be better than you at execution and happier than you when they're driving execution. And if you hire somebody that's affordable, but you don't feel that way about them, you're making a mistake.
Yep.
If I hire the right partner, guy or gal, and they'll do it with it, because the visionary integrator partnership is a partnership. It isn't one person telling another person what to do. It isn't one person chasing the visionary around with a broom
Right.
and a trash can like you're following a trained monkey act in the circus. It's we're a partnership, and I'm going to leverage the integrator skill sets and disciplines to do this kind of work, and that's going to free me up to be the most valuable visionary I can possibly be to this organization. It's like the right marriage, when you're working really hard at a marriage where there's just a mismatch. And then one day you discover a great marriage where you can be you and the integrator can be the integrator, and together you make a dynamic duo that is unstoppable. Oh, that's what I want your viewers to think about and fantasize about and go make happen in their business. And you're right, Jake. It might take 2 or 3 attempts. You might get it wrong, but keep trying until you get it right.
I think people that have read Traction or have a little bit of understanding around EOS, they decide like, oh, I've got to go find my integrator. And so now they spend this unbelievable amount of time and effort trying to like hire the one or the integrator that's going to help them out. And more often than not, it doesn't necessarily work out and they get really frustrated with the experience. Can you speak to how you went and found your integrator?
Yeah. So, boy, interesting. So, I'm going to speak to how Gino found his integrator, and then I'll speak to how he found his successor, me, and then I'll speak to how I worked with Gino and Don to find my integrator to replace Don, who was Gino's integrator. So, Gino found his integrator by sharing with all of his friends and confidants in his network that he was looking for the one. And he had a very clear definition of the core values and the attributes of the successful person. And he got dozens of names, and Don ended up being the top person on the list. But when they met initially, Gino said to him, Don, I don't think you're cut out for this. Okay. He didn't have that feel. And Don said, let me prove it to you. And so Don went out and replicated all of Gino's results as an EOS implementer to demonstrate that he had what it took to not only be successful in the role, but to teach other people who are different from Gino how to be successful in the role. Okay. So he earned his role as the integrator through hard work, discipline, and demonstrating with results. Okay. So fast forward to 2015, Gino and Don started working together in about 2005. So this was about 10 years later when I took over. Gino had executed a 3-year succession plan to find his successor as a visionary and to set me up to be successful. Okay. So that's how that happened. And it just so happened that I was a member of the community that he tapped on the shoulder and said, hey, you're one of the people I think would be great at this role. But there was a very thorough vetting process, some tough and honest conversations about things that I needed to do differently and better. And hopefully they resonated with me and will last me a lifetime. So, and then when Don was ready to step away and return to his life as a grandfather and an EOS full-time EOS implementer, I went through a 12-month period of thinking about what kind of integrator we needed, because it was different than Don, full-time person, and ultimately retained executive search firm specializing in integrator search, headquartered here in the Twin Cities, that happened to be a client of mine. And they exhaustively talked to Gino, me, Don, and the rest of our leadership team to get a sense of what the ideal candidate would look like. And then we went through a process and hired the best candidate from the group. We had 4 really qualified people that we felt confident could do great work. But Kelly Knight, I'm grateful to her every day for the value she brought to our partnership.
That's awesome. So there's a search form in Minneapolis that will specifically go out and find an integrator for the business, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah. My friend Mike Frommelt, originally called Keystone Search, now Strategic I can't remember the name off the top. They just merged with another friend and client of EOS, and they've got a new business. I'll have to get you the details for the show notes.
Yeah, we'll put it in
Awesome.
the show notes.
Very good. One of our clients was commenting last night on Facebook. He took a screen grab of Traction and said he's reading it and he's excited about it and he's into chapter 2. And so I just commented like, "Hey, we're interviewing Mike Paton tomorrow. What question would you like me to ask him?"
That's
And
awesome.
so his response, so this question is for George. What are some questions that you would ask an individual to find out if they're open-minded and they're ready to grow, whether it's a new employee or a current employee?
Yeah, the first if he's interviewing candidates,
Yeah, or
they're
current team members.
open-minded and ready to grow. Oh, is that a great question?
Very cool.
So, from an open-mindedness, I might ask about any strong beliefs they have. Do you have any strong beliefs about people or the world or the way to run a successful business that you'd be willing to share with me? Right? And I'd want them to have strong beliefs, but then I'd probably ask a follow-up question and say, "What would you do if you were confronted with evidence that that strong belief might be misleading?" Might be a way I would ask that question. In terms of the ready to grow, I always ask, what do you do in your free time to keep your saw sharpened? How do you make yourself better? If I know they have kids because it's come up in the conversation, I know you're not allowed to ask those questions anymore, but if it's already come up in the conversation, I say, what do you do to promote learning and growth and betterment in your family? Like I just want to know what they're doing. If they say, "Oh, no, I don't read books," or I what do you mean sharpen the saw? That's
Right.
not a great answer.
Yeah, those are
Yeah.
some indicators, right?
You co-wrote Get a Grip with Gino. How did you decide that this needed to be a part of the library, the EOS library?
One of our motivations was writing a story that would be compelling enough that a visionary wants to read to the end. And so that was one of the motives. We also wanted to illustrate the proper cadence of how a professional EOS implementer teaches the tools that are presented in Traction. It is presented in a different order in the book Traction because it's an academic study rather than a chronological study. And so that was another one.
Well, it's so funny to hear, that you guys were both fans of Pat's because both Chaz and I love Pat's books as well. And so when I was reading Get a Grip, I was like, man, if I would have read this before Traction, I think it would have clicked in my brain a little bit better. As a young boy, I used to grow up reading those choose your own adventure books. And
Yeah.
so I could read the same book 15 times.
Yep.
And when I read Traction for the first time, it was like, oh, I understand what I'm supposed to do here, but like I don't know what the story is for our business.
Yeah.
And so in reading Get a Grip and getting to like walk through this fictional turnaround with the company that you guys wrote about, it just really made it all clearer to me on how to move forward.
Thank you. It's a blessing every time I hear somebody say that, and that was part of the goal. And the other part of the goal is to help our clients understand that the pain and frustration and worry and dislike for people they used to love, that all those things are normal. That if you're running an entrepreneurial company, emotion is gonna happen, and it doesn't make you wrong or bad. It just means you've got an issue and you've got to figure out how to resolve that issue. And so that's really what we were trying to teach is, hey, in real life, this is the way this stuff works. So,
All right, I got a unique question here for you. I like to ask most of our podcast guests this, but I'm a huge believer. In fact, it's the backbone of Gathering the Kings. In chapter 10 of Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill talks about the mastermind principle and two or more minds working in harmony unto something specific. And so the integrator visionary relationship is an obvious mastermind. Like we've just got done
yep.
talking about that, the marriage. But how else have you used this principle in just your journey of being an entrepreneur to be successful or to get leverage?
Yeah. Well, my marriage to Kate is the best mastermind I'm a part of by a mile. She's the best person I know and has helped turn me into a much better person than I was before I met her. But, Gino, Don, and I formed what we call inside the EOS implementer community as the original T group. T stands for traction. 3 implementers working together to hold one another accountable to being great implementers, right? And so now there are literally hundreds of T groups in the EOS implementer community that have between 3 and 8 members, and they meet regularly and drive accountability and problem solve together. We have a Slack channel with all kinds of different channels on it, and people are constantly posting emergency questions, and I'm going into a session and this is going to happen. And so, Napoleon Hill and Think and Grow Rich is probably the book I've heard Gino quote more than everything except Dan Sullivan's stuff, Pat Lencioni's stuff, and Vern Harnish's stuff.
Okay.
So, we're all over that too. And I applaud what you're doing. And people, an unfortunate percentage of the people who are running entrepreneurial companies need to be coerced into joining mastermind groups or finding peer groups where they're not going to feel so alone, and they're going to realize that everybody else is going through the same stuff and feel better about reaching out to get help. And so I applaud that, and I'm grateful to you guys for doing that work.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Just a thought there on that emotion. Like, I know the entrepreneur feels isolated. They have the weight, as we say it, or the weight of the crown. But there's that gap, which you just described, of like, I'll just do it by myself, or I'll just carry it a little bit longer. Or maybe there's not like a full acknowledgement of that I'm isolated, or that I'm alone, or that maybe even feels weak, and joining up with other people just to like get together and talk about problems I don't know if I see that solving my problems. I just see it as maybe a big group of friends. What would you say to that person that's kind of stuck in that gap?
Yeah, what I hear more often, to be candid with you, is I just don't have the time for that.
Right.
Right. And there's a cartoon that gets passed around the implementer community a lot. You guys probably see this in your network as well, of the salesperson with the first wheel talking to a group of 3 cavemen pushing a wheelbarrow that's got a square wheel on it.
Yeah.
He says, "Hey, I think I could help you." And they say, "Hey, we're too busy right now." Right? Like give it a shot. You might find that it frees up time, that participating in a group of other like-minded people, one question and you're solving 3 issues that you would have struggled with for the next 90 days.
Yeah.
So I just say, just try it. Give it a shot. Call the person you trust most, who is in some kind of a mastermind or peer group, and ask them for a recommendation or 2.
Yeah, that's good. I think that the ultimate piece there is what you just said. Is I get one little snippet that I heard, and it actually solves 3 things for me, or that it was a domino effect. Because I solved this, then it automatically solved this and this. And it's hard to calculate those things. But when you start doing it for a regular period of time, I've got folks within our group that have been, around for maybe a year, 2, even 3. And the responses that I get from them now are, well, my business has grown, doubled or tripled. I'm spending more time with my family, especially my wife or my husband. I have more time for my health than I ever have before. And it's like, I'm still like in that place that this is them scratching my head going, I'm working less. I have a better life, but my business is crushing. I'm still kind of in like, how is this even happening? But to your point, a lot of times when you spend time on the things that matter, it doesn't actually take as much time. Right?
Yeah. Well, the hurrieder I go, the behinder I get is kind of the thing I hear a lot when somebody's on their way into an EOS implementation. Overwhelm promotes more overwhelm, and, methodical elimination of issues by strengthening the 6 key components of a business solve a bunch of issues and free up time. And so you can keep bringing file folders full of work home, or going to the office 7 days a week and lamenting the fact that your car is the first in the parking lot and the last to leave every night, or you can get help. And I hope more people get help. I think that's an epidemic of a problem in this country. I think our rugged individualism on which this country was founded, the pendulum can swing way too far one direction, and every once in a while it's okay to swing it back the other direction and say, hey, it turns out I'm a human and I'm full of flaws. And, talking to other people who might have struggled with the same things and getting their perspective might make me a better human. That's valuable stuff.
Yeah, extremely. All right, Mike. Well, how can the listener find you? We'll put this in the show notes as well. But of course, they can get your book. But how can they find you? They want to connect with you. Maybe they want to connect with EOS. But like you're particular. You got this thing going on that's just Mike. How can they find you particularly?
Well, they can find me all over the EOS Worldwide website, much to my chagrin, to be perfect. But if they search the implementer directory for an implementer in the Twin Cities or Sarasota, Florida, where I'm establishing a presence, they'll find me right away.
Love it. We'll put all that in the show notes. Mike, your insight, just years of history, the stories, all of that super valuable. Honestly, I wish I had a Rogan 3-hour period with you here, but got so many more questions. But we appreciate you being here. Appreciate your time. Blessings to you, your family, Kate, all the things that you're touching here in 2024. Thank you so much.
Yeah. And Chaz and Jake, thank you. I really admire the work you're doing, and it was a great pleasure to be part of your show today. Thank you.
Jake, my man, we just got done with Mike. Lot of stuff on EOS. What are you thinking? What are you feeling?
I really enjoy some of the behind the scenes story stuff that he was talking about with Gino and Don and building EOS, and him talking about the Mastermind principle and Think and Grow Rich and how Napoleon Hill is one of his literary heroes. This whole concept of EOS, though, it is simple and as difficult as you want to make it. And hearing Mike talk about the years and years of experience he's had, not only running EOS, but also being an implementer for other businesses and helping them through this process, I think it was just valuable, super valuable.
I felt the same way as far as the simplicity of his answers, but the weight or the movement that those answers could give to our listeners, the suggestions to implementation as opposed to self-implementation. What were your thoughts on that?
Yeah. I understand that you and I are a unique breed.
Yeah.
I feel, I may be incorrect with this, but I feel we've been successful in self-implementing EOS. And we self-implemented it in a time in our business where we knew that we wanted to have this foundation, that as the team grew, we could grow with this EOS process, with this vision, traction, and vision integrator roles inside of the business.
Yeah.
But I also recognize that like most people aren't us and should have an implementer come in and help them do this, because it's weighty stuff, it's heavy stuff, and you need a coach. Just like Michael Jordan had a shot coach, he's the greatest basketball player of all time. He could be teaching people how to shoot, but he knew the importance of having someone else to help him guide him through the success that he had in his career. Same thing here. Like, bring in someone, help them or help you implement these concepts.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that the heaviest piece there for the entrepreneur is that I can do it, or I'm capable of doing it. It's the same thing that the visionary carries the integrator role as long as they have to, I guess, right? Because they're capable. We're capable of doing it. But should you is the better question. And even just thinking about my conversation, with George a couple of days ago, because he was asking me like, hey, how much does it cost and what are the benefits, and kind of just the back and forth. And I was like, well, to be honest with you, you're an architect. Okay, cool. Like, you're disciplined, you're forward thinking, you got the ability to follow through, but like, I don't know what the rest of your team looks like. And Jake and I are both that as a visionary integrator partnership, but we were also really small. And so you have a big team already. And for you to be the guy that is rolling this out and kind of pushing it, as opposed to here's the expert and we're all now going to follow this person's lead. As soon as I said that, he was like, oh yeah, like that makes way more sense, because I could introduce it, but to push this, yeah, no, I have a business.
No, exactly. And we mentioned it on the conversation with Mike, but sometimes as the visionary of that organization, you're the idea factory, and less than half of those ideas get implemented. So for you to come to your leadership team and say, hey, I've got this idea, we're going to self-implement EOS. This is something that, gets put on the wood pile of great ideas that never come to fruition. And so by having someone else be the weight, be the force behind pushing this boulder up the hill, I mean, it's money well spent.
Yeah, I agree. Well, the conversation with Mike was incredible. I'm sure we've got more thoughts, but it was cool to get a little tidbit here after the show just recorded up. And I think that our audience will be pleased as they listen.
Just as a side note, I can't overstate how good reading Get a Grip was and pairing that with Traction. It changes the way that I viewed that book. And so if people are thinking about implementing EOS, whether self-implementing or hiring an implementer, reading Get a Grip is, I think, the first step that I would recommend, even before reading Traction.
Thank you for listening today. I hope that you were able to pull out a few nuggets to go apply into your business right away. More importantly, though, I hope that you're realizing that it takes more to be successful than just being by yourself, doing it all on your own, carrying the weight all by yourself. What I have realized, not only in my own journey from multiple businesses and multiple different industries, and now interviewing over 200 or 300 other very successful 7, 8, and 9-figure business owners, is that it's tough to do it alone. And so Gathering the Kings exists to bring together successful entrepreneurs. In fact, we are putting together 1,000 kings, specifically who are grateful but not done. We're intentionally assembling kings who fight tooth and nail for their business, family, and communities. And here's what we believe: that in the pursuit of excellence in those areas, that it ignites within us the responsibility to govern power and forge a lasting legacy. So if that relates and resonates with you, and you know that you need people around you, sharp, qualified, other very successful business owners, I want you to go to gatheringthekings.com. I want you to take a look at what we're doing and see if it makes sense for you to be part of our pursuit to 1,000 kings. Talk soon.